I was only 21 that year, though sometimes when I think back on it now, it feels like I had already lived a whole lifetime by then. It was 1984, a cold autumn in Washington state. The kind of season where the trees turned fire red and gold, but the streets themselves felt gray and empty, like the life had been drained out of them. I was living in a little rental house on a narrow street outside Spokane, with peeling paint on the siding, and a front yard that was mostly mud when the rain came. My neighbor, Elaine Harper, lived 2 doors down in a pale blue house with lace curtains and a garden that seemed always too perfect for our neighborhood. She was in her late 40s, elegant in that old-fashioned way, with her hair pinned back and her pearls always in place, even if she was just watering her roses. She wasn't exactly friendly, more watchful, the kind of neighbor who noticed everything. If a car she didn't recognize stopped on our street, she'd be the first to peer out from behind her curtains. I didn't know her well, but I knew she had a reputation. People whispered she had been married to a powerful man, some businessman from Seattle, though he died years back. She kept to herself, but at the same time she seemed to keep tabs on all of us. I never minded. I figured she was just lonely. But then came the night when her house went quiet forever. It was October 12th, a Friday night. I remember it so clearly because I had just come home from my job at the diner downtown, my hair still smelling of coffee and fried onions. The rain was falling in sheets, tapping against my bedroom window as I tried to settle into bed. Sometime around midnight I thought I heard something, a sharp sound. At first I told myself it was just the storm, maybe a branch snapping or a garbage can tipping over. But then there was another sound, a woman's cry, short and cut off too quickly. I sat up in bed, heart pounding. I looked out the window but saw nothing but the wet black street and the hazy glow of the street lamp. I told myself not to panic. This was a rough neighborhood at times. Shouts and fights weren't uncommon. I laid back down, but I couldn't shake the unease. The next morning, everything changed. I was walking outside to get the newspaper when I noticed the group of people gathered in front of Elaine's house. Police cars, lights flashing red and blue, doors wide open, a stretcher being carried out. Even from where I stood, I could see her white hand dangling limply from beneath the sheet. Elaine Harper was dead. The police wasted no time. They combed her garden, dusted her doorknobs, and spoke to every neighbor on the block. I tried to stay out of it, but when an officer knocked on my door, I felt a chill run straight through me. He introduced himself as Detective Howard, mid-40s, trench coat, tired eyes. The kind of man who looked like he'd seen too much already. He asked if he could come in, and I let him. We sat at my kitchen table while he flipped through his notepad. He asked me where I had been the night before, and I told him I was home after my late diner shift. He leaned forward, pen ready, and asked if I had heard anything unusual. I hesitated. That cry, that sharp sound that had haunted me all night. I knew I should mention it, but fear clawed at me. What if saying it made me look guilty somehow? Finally, I admitted I had heard something. Maybe a shout, around midnight coming from her house. His eyes flickered with interest as he wrote it down. He kept pressing. Did I know her well? Had she ever mentioned being afraid of anyone? Had I noticed strangers on the street? I shook my head again and again. By the end, my hands were trembling. He never outright accused me, but I could feel it in the air. Suspicion. And later, when I saw the way the neighbors started looking at me, whispering when I walked by, crossing the street instead of saying hello, I knew. The police hadn't told me everything, but word traveled fast. They thought I had something to do with it. It started with little things. Mrs. Keegan from across the street stopped coming into the diner when I was working. Kids whispered as I walked past, their eyes wide, as though I were some kind of monster. Then came the rumors. People remembered the time Elaine and I had argued about her roses, or the time she scolded me for playing my music too loud. Those small things suddenly became evidence in their mouths. "She never liked that Carter girl," I heard one woman mutter in the grocery store aisle. "Always said she was trouble." I wanted to scream, but instead I kept my head down, hoping the truth would surface. 2 weeks after the murder, something strange happened. I was walking home from work when I noticed the back door to Elaine's house, still sealed with police tape, was ajar. The lock had been broken. I froze on the sidewalk, staring. Someone was in there. Before I could run for the payphone, a man burst out. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark jacket with the hood pulled up. He shoved past me, nearly knocking me to the ground, and sprinted down the street. My heart hammered as I stared after him, knowing I'd just seen something important. I told the police immediately, describing him as best I could. Detective Howard listened, but his expression never gave anything away. When he asked if I recognized the man, I shook my head. I didn't, yet deep down, I couldn't help but wonder. Could this be the real killer, returning to cover his tracks? Or was it just another cruel twist of fate, pulling me deeper into suspicion? The following weeks were hell. The police questioned me again and again, pressing for details I didn't have. Every time I walked into the diner, conversation stopped. My landlord began dropping hints that maybe I should find another place to live. I began doubting myself. Had I seen more than I realized? Had I missed some clue that could clear my name? One night, unable to sleep, I walked past Elaine's house. The garden was wild now, roses withering, weeds creeping up through the soil. Her lace curtains still hung in the windows, though dust coated everything inside. I thought of the sound I'd heard that night. The cry, the sharp final note of it. I knew I hadn't imagined it. And I knew someone else was out there. Someone who had wanted her gone. But for now, all eyes were on me. The weeks dragged on like a nightmare that never ended. Every day I felt the weight of suspicion pressing closer, like a shadow I couldn't shake. I could see it in the way people looked at me, hear it in the whispers when I passed by. To them, it didn't matter that the police hadn't arrested me yet. In their eyes, I was guilty. Detective Howard came by again and again. Each time his questions circled back to the same things. My whereabouts, my relationship with Elaine, whether I had debts, enemies, secrets. He was polite enough, but there was something in his eyes that told me he believed the pieces pointed toward me. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. My hands trembled so badly at work that I spilled coffee on customers' laps more than once. Then, one evening, about a month after Elaine's death, I came home to find a letter slipped under my door. No envelope, no name, just one line scrawled in messy handwriting. "You're next if you don't keep your mouth shut." I dropped it like it was poison. My stomach churned, my chest tight. Someone wanted me to stay quiet. But quiet about what? I didn't know anything. Unless the man I had seen breaking into Elaine's house thought I'd recognized him. I called Detective Howard, my voice shaking, and read the note to him. He came right over, studied the paper, and tucked it into an evidence bag. His expression darkened, but he said very little. Just that I should be careful. Careful. As if that word could keep me alive. The days that followed were worse. My phone rang late at night with silence on the other end. Once, when I was walking home, I swore I saw someone following me. A figure lingering just far enough behind to make me doubt myself. I started locking every window, double-checking every door. Still, I never felt safe, and all the while the rumors grew louder. I heard that the police had found traces of blood on a kitchen knife in my house. I knew it wasn't true. My knives were old and rusted, sure, but I had never harmed anyone. But gossip doesn't need the truth to spread like fire. I nearly lost my job at the diner. Customers complained, said it made them uneasy to be served by a murder suspect. My boss gave me a warning, saying he'd have to let me go if things didn't quiet down. I felt like the walls of my life were caving in, inch by inch. Then came the day when Detective Howard asked me to come to the station. I remember sitting in that interrogation room, the walls a sickly green, the light buzzing above me. He set a photo on the table, a blurry image from a convenience store security camera, a man with a hood pulled low over his face. "Is this the man you saw breaking into Elaine Harper's house?" he asked. I leaned forward, my palms sweating. The image was grainy, but the size, the way he carried himself, it felt the same. I nodded slowly. "Yes, I think so. Howard studied me for a long time." "Do you know who he is?" I shook my head. I've never seen him before that night. His jaw tightened, and he slid the photo back into the folder. "We have reason to believe this man has a record. Armed robbery, assault, did time in Monroe Correctional." A chill ran through me. A convict. That explained the threat, the fear in his eyes when he burst from Elaine's house. But if the police knew this, why was I still their prime suspect? The answer came in whispers. The convict, whoever he was, had been paroled not long before Elaine's death, but he'd vanished, skipped meetings with his parole officer. There was no trace of him now, and without him, I was still the easiest answer. The neighbor, the young woman with no alibi beyond her own word. The pressure grew unbearable. One night I broke down in front of my reflection, staring at my hollow eyes, my pale face. "I didn't do this," I whispered. "Why won't they believe me?" But then, a twist of fate. 2 months after Elaine's death, another break-in happened. This time at a house across town. An elderly couple had come home to find their door forced open, their belongings scattered, and a man in their living room. The husband had fought him off, but not before catching a glimpse of his face. The description matched the man I had seen. The police had no choice but to widen their search, and when they finally caught him in Tacoma, drunk and belligerent in a bar, they found more than they'd expected. In his bag was a bracelet, gold with small pearls, engraved with the initials E.H. Elaine Harper's. I remember the call from Detective Howard. His voice was tight, clipped. But there was something else, too. Regret. "We've taken someone into custody," he told me. A parolee named Raymond Brooks. He was in prison for armed robbery. We believe he killed Mrs. Harper. I sank into my chair, shaking all over. Relief and rage warred inside me. Relief that the truth was finally out. Rage that it had taken so long, that I had nearly lost everything while the real killer was still free. The trial that followed dragged on for months. I sat in the courtroom, my hands folded tightly in my lap, listening as the details unfolded. Elaine had known Raymond Brooks years earlier, back when her husband was still alive. He had worked odd jobs around their house, yard work, painting, handyman stuff. He'd been caught stealing once, and Elaine's husband had pressed charges. Brooks had gone to prison swearing he'd get his revenge. When he was released on parole, he had tracked her down, waited until the night she was alone, and broken in. The evidence was overwhelming. Her jewelry in his bag, his fingerprints in her house. The note slipped under my door matched his handwriting. When the jury declared him guilty of murder, a weight lifted from me I hadn't realized I'd been carrying so heavily. People in the courtroom turned to look at me, some with shame in their eyes, some with pity. None of them had defended me when the whispers started, when I was treated like a criminal. But I didn't care anymore. I was free. It took years to rebuild my life. The suspicion never vanished completely. Some neighbors moved away, and I didn't stay long in that house either. Too many memories, too many ghosts. Still, even now, when I walk past a house with lace curtains or a garden too perfect, I feel that same chill. I hear that cry in the night, sharp and final. And I remember what it feels like to have the world turn its eyes on you, ready to believe the worst. I was only 21. But the night Elaine Harper was murdered, I grew old in ways I'll never forget.